Hey guys, how's it going? So I thought of a fun little idea for a video, and I hope this is going to be fun for all of you. Basically, what is a firearm and what is a gun that's actually not considered a firearm? I'll explain in just a minute. So some of you are a little newer to guns, firearms, whatnot, and maybe you'll learn something. Others know more than me about these things, but for you guys, you still might want to stay tuned because I'm going to show some pretty cool, we'll call them guns for now, that may or may not be firearms that you don't see too often. And real quick guys, I'm going to show you a lot of really rare old firearms that were quite frankly hard for me to get. So if you guys want to help me out, the links to help the channel are down in the description. I don't write for any famous gun magazines, okay? I don't have any corporate sponsors or gun shops that give me guns. All I have is you, so I appreciate it. So let's start off with a firearm. We think about most commonly, pistol, rifle, shotgun. Those are the main types that you're going to encounter. So this first one I'm going to show you, and this is going to be according to the Gun Control Act of '68, which is what defines what a firearm is. And there's also another law called the National Firearms Act, which is applicable to some firearms. Let's say, for example, short-barreled rifle, short-barreled shotgun, silencer, machine gun, things like that. So I'm going to talk about the Gun Control Act of '68 and how it pertains to firearms. But keep in mind, NFA rules apply, and the National Firearms Act has different definitions than the Gun Control Act for those that are regulated by. These are the tax stamp guns. And also, I'm going to be talking federal law. All of the states have different laws, and in many states, for certain purposes such as concealed carry or if used in a crime or things like that, actually don't distinguish between whether it's truly a firearm or not. They're still going to call it a firearm. So just keep in mind, everything in context here is with federal law, and this is not to be considered legal advice whatsoever. This is just for your entertainment, so there you go. So the first gun I'm going to show you, this is indeed a firearm. This is a Yugo M85. It is of the Kalashnikov variety, featuring an underfolding stock. Now the Yugo M85 is pretty cool. It's a short, compact AK platform that can be fired either with the underfolding stock folded or with the push button on the left side deployed. Not the most comfortable, but can definitely be fired from the shoulder pretty effectively. It features a sheet metal stamped receiver. However, it does have the bulge style extra heavy duty trunnion type, which is very nice. We'll notice that instead of having the rear sight up here, the rear sight is connected to this tab of steel that's affixed via a couple rivets to the top cover. And the top cover is what you would call more of the crink-off style design. Crink-off. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about. It hinges and stays in place, which is pretty darn convenient and easy to put it on and off. Going up to the front here, we have a combination front gas block and front sight that is protected by ears, and it has a flip up where you can have the post front sight or more of a white single dot sight, and it's probably hard to see from here, but that's the best I can get it from this particular camera angle. So you can see that flip up sight right there. And then in the back, it also has two adjustments where it's going to go from a 200 meter base setting, flip it down to 400. So pretty cool little rig here. Now normally these are equipped with a shorter barrel, and the actual barrel itself technically is short. It ends right here. However, this has an extended booster that is blind pinned and welded. So this particular firearm is considered just a Title I firearm, and it does not get affected by the National Firearms Act. So technically this has a 16-inch, actually slightly longer barrel with this permanently attached device. However, if a tax stamp were procured for this, ahead of time of course, this weld and pin could easily be removed, bring it down to its size, and have a real handy little SBR. And by the way, any of these guns, firearms, not firearms that you guys see in here, let me know down in the comments which one you guys like, what your favorite one is. Heck, name a few of them. I'll kind of go by order. I'll take a little mental tally, and I can do standalone reviews on each of these guns that I'm going to show in this video. So this shoots 5.56 or 223. Feeds from a detachable box magazine. No, this does not take AR mags. This is more of the military style configuration that takes the regular rock and lock 5.56 mags. It's real easy to do when you're not trying to show it on camera, guys. And it shoots 5.56, which is a modern center fire cartridge. This is a rifle, and by all means, this is absolutely considered a firearm. But I'm going to read from you real quick what the GCA of 1968 defines a firearm as. Alright, so the definitions of the federal law are going to be found in 18 U.S. Code 921, and this is from the definition section. And in Chapter A, Section 3, Subsection 3, the term firearm means A, any weapon, including a starter gun, which will or is designed to, or may be readily converted to, expel a projectile by the act of an explosion. B, the frame or receiver of such weapon. Or C, any firearm muffler or firearm silencer. Or D, any destructive device. Such term does not include an antique firearm. So that's where a rifle like this definitely falls into firearm according to these laws, because it does indeed expel a projectile. But the part I'm going to go into mainly in this video would be the last part of this sentence. Such term does not include an antique firearm. So what's an antique firearm? And is it actually a firearm? Well, it says right here, no, it's not. Because under the definition, the term firearm, it says such term does not include an antique firearm. So an antique firearm, according to this, is actually not a firearm. Remember, one more time, your state laws may vary. Concealed carry laws may vary from state to state. And also, the National Firearms Act is going to have its own different set of rules as to what it defines as a firearm or not. But according to the rules of 18 USC, we have the term antique firearm means A, any firearm, including any firearm with a matchlock, flintlock, percussion cap, or similar type ignition system, manufactured in or before 1898. So it's any firearm including. That doesn't necessarily get rid of center fire, it's just saying including. So if it's made before 1899 is what that's actually saying. Any firearm manufactured in or before 1898. So that includes all the way up to the last date, December 31st of 1898. That is an antique firearm and is not a firearm. Or B, any replica of any firearm described in subparagraph A, if such replica, and there's two term conditions here that it has to also meet, is not designed or redesigned for using rimfire or conventional centerfire fixed ammunition. So if the gun was made, or it's a replica of a model of gun that was made before 1899, but it's been designed or redesigned to take centerfire or rimfire ammunition, it now loses its antique status and it's considered a true firearm. Or, here's the other exception, 2. Uses rimfire or conventional center fire fixed ammunition, which is no longer manufactured in the United States and which is not readily available in the ordinary channels of commercial trade. So that's basically saying, yeah, it was a replica of something that was made before 1899, but it's going to take some weird rimfire cartridge that's not available, like the 44 rimfire, which, yeah, you might find it here and there online on a collectible ammo site, but for all intents and purposes, nobody's truly making in any type of normal trade or commerce 44 rimfire. You're not going to be able to take, for example, something that takes 7.62 by 54R, which I'll get to that in just a little bit here, that was manufactured after 1898 and classified that as an antique, even if it's the same clone or replica of a Mosin Nagant that was made before, because before 1899, because 7.62 by 54R is still quite common and readily available in commercial trade and in the United States. And C, any muzzle-loading rifle, muzzle-loading shotgun, or muzzle-loading pistol which is designed to use black powder or black powder substitute and which cannot use fixed ammunition. For purposes of this subparagraph, the term antique firearm shall not include any weapon which incorporates a firearm frame or receiver. So that means something that's made after 1899 or otherwise converted to fire modern centerfire cartridges, right? Of any firearm which is converted into a muzzle-loading weapon, or any muzzle-loading weapon which can be readily converted to fire fixed ammunition by replacing the barrel, bolt, breech block, or any combination thereof. Now this gets complicated and I'm not going to go too thorough into this, but basically what they're saying is this. If you have something that's a muzzle loader, that's a percussion cap, let's go with the new Army model revolver. People call it the Remington 1858 because that was the patent date. If you buy a Pieta that was made in the year 2020, but keep it the way you buy it, meaning it still takes the, the ramrod, the percussion cap ignition, the round musket ball, the black powder or black powder substitute, that's still considered an antique because even though it was made in modern times, it's still using the same design, okay, as an actual antique, and you've not done anything to modernize it. Now, I will give you an example. If you buy a conversion cylinder, which you can do, they're available to put into your new Army, right? The second you do that, and let's just say that conversion cylinder lets you shoot 45 long Colt, even though that's an old cartridge, that's still available through modern business means in the United States. It's commercially available to the market. Now you've actually made a firearm. And that is considered a firearm pursuant to the Gun Control Act of '68. So we're going to go by GCA in this because that's just a pistol, right? It's not necessarily covered by the National Firearms Act. But yeah, and I mentioned that National Firearms Act thing. If you had one of those short, percussion cap rifles where the barrel was less than 16 inches, and all of a sudden you convert it over to take 45 Colt hypothetically, now the NFA applies. The GCA applies and all of that. So you have to watch it when you're converting stuff. But that's a big rabbit hole I'm not really going to get into. But what I do want to show you guys is some items that are actually truly considered antique firearms, therefore not actual firearms that, you can still get today. And I'm going to show you a couple cool ones right now. And then I'm going to end by showing you a couple surprises that almost seem like they would meet the definition of being an antique, but not quite. And I'll tell you why when I get to those. Alright, so the first one is going to be the famous Mosin Nagant, and many of you guys are probably familiar with this firearm. These were made at several arsenals in Russia. These started being made in 1891, actually by the French originally, for Russia. And they were made by many countries in many different forms, this being an M1891, modernized in 1930 to the 9130, the various different carbines, and many other common block countries use the Mosin. So this was produced from 1891 all the way well into the 1950s by many countries, and these are very prolific. Now, what do we have here? Basically, this is a bolt action rifle chambered in 7.62 by 54R. Now this is an old Russian cartridge going back to a little bit before 1891. So the cartridge is old, but they still make it today, and you can still buy Barnaul and many other Russian brands right now commonly available, and it's a center fire cartridge. So by that definition alone, just because this was designed in 1891, okay, and this is an original M1891 here, just in and of itself, this is not going to be an antique firearm if you have, say, a 1942 Izhevsk 9130. Even if you had an 1899 M1891, okay, this is not going to be an antique because it fires modern centerfire ammunition, and while the design was made before 1899, it takes modern ammo. However, this particular rifle I'm holding in my hands right here, this being an original, you can see the original jagged edge rear sight, you can see the hex receiver, the different style upper handguard that you can notice is definitely different. This is an original rifle, and this particular one, let's see if the camera will zoom in, was indeed made in 1898. You can see right there, 1898R at the Izhevsk factory. So this one right here, even though it shoots 7.62 by 54R, commonly available ammunition right now, this is still considered an antique according to the GCA because it was made pre-1899. So this particular model right here, not a firearm. So you can find these still. I'll tell you another good place to find or look for antique receiver, because this is actually the barrel date technically. You have to take the wood off and look on the bottom tang. That's right below here. On the underside, once you take the wood off of the receiver, that's where the true date of the firearm is. And the firearm, the receiver is the part that actually matters in determining what a firearm's classified as. But I've taken this apart, and the receiver tang is also in 1898. This still has the original barrel. But you can find a lot of the reworked fins. A lot of the Finnish rifles, which there's many different variants that the Finns renamed them when they would capture them or purchase them and convert them over to their standards. But even the old Finn M91s, even a lot of the Finnish M39 Mosins, they might have a modern dated barrel on there that the Finns put on. But when you take them off and actually look at the receiver, a lot of those are pre-1899, therefore classified as an antique firearm and not a firearm. So this gun is not actually considered a firearm by legal standards. Now we can call it a rifle because it has a rifle barrel. We can call it a gun. We can call it many things, but not a firearm. M1891 Mosin. Thought some of you guys might like to see that. Alright, so I just talked about the M91 Mosin. Now we're going to go back in history to before there was the Mosin. And this is a Russian model 1870 Berdan, otherwise known as the Berdan II rifle. Now this rifle was originally designed as the 1868 by Berdan in the United States, and they were made by Colt. Well, after just a couple years, they switched over to this upgraded bolt action style because the original Berdan was more of a trapdoor. So this is the second iteration of Berdan's rifle. They started off making a small number of them in the United States just to get the ball rolling. Then manufacturer went over to Russia. So this would be a Russian gun rifle, but this is another one that would indeed not be a firearm, as this was made in 1883 at the Izhevsk factory in Russia. We can see 1883 right there. We can also see some unique markings from Ethiopia, because this is one that came over here via Ethiopia. And Ethiopia has kept this rifle since presumably the 1800s. And actually rather original condition. A couple holes drilled through the stock, which is the provision they used to carry their slings, rather than the original sling hangers that would have hung here, forward of the trigger guard, and up on the barrel band. So this is a 42 caliber, or if you convert it over to metric, it's a 10.75 by 58 millimeter rimmed cartridge. This is a single shot breech loading cartridge rifle, shooting the 42 Berdan. Kind of a unique type bolt action that is probably considered weak by today's standards, but there's no locking lugs on the front of the bolt here, like you're going to see in most conventional bolt action rifles. We're going to see this is rather just straight and rounded. Instead, it comes over and it locks up right here on the edge of the receiver and the bolt handle. So you can see the bolt right here coming up in the battery, locking in place, rotating over to the right about 45 degrees. And this is indeed your single locking lug, is the part of the bolt that the bolt handle is attached to. There's no magazine in here. This is just a single shot, but this was the evolution from basically muskets, where Russia was going into true center fired breech loading type weapons. The original one being the trapdoor style, and this being their bolt action design. These are very uncommon in the United States. A recent small batch came in from Ethiopia, but other than that, these are kind of hard to find. Now, they actually made a few million of these, but just for some reason or another, not many have come over to the United States, which makes the Berdan II a pretty unique rifle. Not legally a firearm, though. This one being made in 1883, and these were made all the way up to 1890. So basically 1870 to 1890 is when these were produced. And I believe they made almost 3 million of them total at 3 different factories in Russia. But yeah, nice old gun. Just remember, guys, if you want to see a standalone in any of these, let me know. I'm going to show you guys this muzzle. It's completely open and cleared, safety checked, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, look at that. Big 42 caliber. Big, huge cartridge. 10.75 by 58 millimeter R. Wouldn't want to stand in front of it, would you? I don't think so. But yeah, I'll take another look here from this side at those Ethiopian markings that are on the rifle. There we go. And the Ethiopians just kept the original Russian markings and just stamped their own symbols, if you will, right next to it. Alright, here's another one from the late 1800s. And this is the German Gewehr 88, otherwise known as the commission rifle. And that is because in the 1880s, when they were looking for a new rifle, instead of going with the Mauser brothers and taking on one of their current modern, Mauser designs, modern of that era, they decided to develop a rifle by committee or by commission, if you will. This was a government commission, and this is what they came up with. Many people will confuse these for a Mauser. They'll call it the Gewehr 88 Mauser. This is actually indeed not a Mauser, although it does share some of the same type characteristics. You'll notice right away it has a magazine that stands down, proud of the stock, whereas the Mausers are more integral, right? And this is another one that's most certainly a rifle. It's a gun, but this is not legally a firearm. This one was made in 1890 at the Erfurt factory in Germany. You can see the little crown there in the Erfurt 1890. Bolt action. Now this one's a repeater, speaking of the magazine. This takes the Mannlicher style clips, and yes, I don't mean magazine, I mean a clip. This is the magazine, guys, and it feeds from a Steyr type clip where you would feed them through the top, and then at the last shot the clip would come out of the bottom. And this also coming to the United States via Ethiopia. This is still a very, very original specimen, because most of these were converted over where they would cut stripper clip notches here in the top of the receiver, and they would fill in this hole and feed them from the more modern stripper clips that you may be familiar with for your Mosin or Mauser or otherwise. But this particular example, which is actually very rare in the United States, to still have the original cutout and the original style magazine that holds the Steyr type clips. So it's a clip fed bolt action. It has a marked adjustable rear sight. There's a ladder here that can be moved up and down. Sling swivel on the bottom rear of the buttstock. Another one up front here on the barrel band. And when you look at this, something looks weird about it right away. Like the barrel's like an inch around, right? Actually, no. This fires the 8mm Mauser cartridge, otherwise known as the 7.92 by 57. This is actually a barrel shroud that's made out of a thinner sheet metal that was designed to help protect and to help keep the barrel cool, or not really keep the barrel cool, but keep it a little cooler to the touch for whoever's operating, because this rifle does lack an upper handguard. So instead of just having an exposed barrel, we can see here, this rifle is completely empty, guys. I know what's beyond the camera. There's no cameraman, okay? You can see the actual crown of the muzzle of the barrel right here, and then you can see how much larger this actual thin sheet metal type tubular jacket is. So that's a pretty cool design, with the provision for the bayonet mount right up here connected to the front barrel band. So the Gewehr 88 German commission rifle. We'll take a quick look at the marking right there, GEW 88. And these also were purchased by the Turks, and you'll see Turkish versions of this in the United States with a couple different model revisions of this. I think they have the 8805, the 8805/15. You guys might need to correct me on that, but the Turks definitely had several versions of these, and those can also be picked up on the surplus market in the United States for cheaper than an actual original German. So this is basically, guys, exactly the way this, not a firearm, but rifle looked the day it was made in 1890, 130 years ago. That's what's kind of cool about these Ethiopian firearms. They tended to buy it, maybe put some of their own markings on it, which in this case they didn't, so maybe not. But other than that, they didn't really modify the firearms. They just kept them either in service or in their arsenal depot storage for all these years. And we can see some old German proof marks right there. Those are arsenal acceptance marks. So, Gewehr 88, German, not a firearm. So we're talking about the Germans. Here's another one, and this is another one that's actually quite rare in the United States. And this particular one is a Gewehr model 91. Now they made two versions of this that are almost identical. This one here being marked GEW 91. There's another one that's the sister to this that's called the KAR, or Carbine 88. And the Carbine 88 is basically just a shrunk down, shorter barreled version of the Gewehr 88 commission rifle that I showed you. This one, being a Gewehr 91, is basically the same thing. It just has a stacking rod on the end, is basically the major difference between that and a Carbiner 98. But it has to do with a whole nother history lesson. Again, guys, I can go over this in another video, so just leave your comments. I'm just doing a quick skim through each one of these. Same thing, 8mm Mauser, 7.92 by 57. We'll notice that the sling inlet is here for more of a collar style sling, as well as on the side here. So we're noticing a different sling setup. With this being a cavalry carbine type, we notice there is no provision for a bayonet, and it has this pug nose look that looks a lot like some of the Enfield models on the front. So a hooded bladed front sight, a much smaller adjustable rear sight, because these firearms were more for people that needed to carry these mobily on horses and such like that, cavalry troops, and they wanted it to be handy and lightweight, which indeed it is. Willing to sacrifice some range and the ability to, you know, mount the conventional style bayonet on there. Same thing, guys, you can see that this has kind of a cool teardrop shaped flat type charging handle. So that just, again, that little down swept thin makes it a little more streamlined, easier to carry, less of a chance of snagging. But again, this is a repeater, a bolt action, and this one, again, being in original condition, still feeds with the original Mannlicher Steyr type clips, if you will. So this was not altered to take modern stripper clips, and it still has the hole in the bottom for the empty clip to eject out of the bottom. Now we're going to notice this one here is also an Erfurt 1893. I'll show you that. And you're also going to notice on this particular rifle, we do see a couple markings. So there's Erfurt 1893 and a couple markings from Ethiopia right there. Those couple funny looking characters. So this is an Ethiopian marked original Erfurt. Basically, you could call this a Car 88, but this particular one's a Gewehr 91. Again, very subtle change, but these are pretty uncommon in the United States. The Car 88s are rather uncommon, and I think these Gewehr 91s are even a little bit more rare. I've not seen many. Same thing here. We have the thin sheet metal barrel shroud, if you will. We're going to come up to the front. This weapon's unloaded. You're going to see the front's totally different, though, with it having this kind of pug nose cap on the front right there. And this is your stacking rod, so you could stack the rifles in a teepee, if you will, instead of giving them the chance of just laying them on the ground or whatnot. But yeah, this definitely has that thin sheet metal. This is an old rifle. It's been around for what, 1893, so 127 years. You can see it's got a couple dents here. This dent is just in the shroud, not in the actual barrel, because the 8mm barrel is protected under this. This is basically just to protect from heat. Probably not the best idea overall, because they did end up going away from this, and I don't really see it return on any of the other German guns after the fact. So there you guys go. Gewehr 1891. Not a firearm. This is, again, an antique firearm, guys. Not considered a firearm according to federal law. I also see some original Bavarian unit markings here on the Front barrel band, again, pitted with age. Lots of patina on this rifle. No actual live rust on it, just old patina. Let me see if that'll show up there. It's real faint. But there you go. I believe these to be Bavarian unit markings. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. I'm not an expert on these, and this isn't intended to be a complete review on any one of these guns. Just kind of a hangout and going over some of these old girls. Here's the next rifle that is also not a firearm. This is another antique made in 1886 at Torino. And this is an Italian Vetterli. And this is the 1870/87/15. Meaning it's originally was of Italian Vetterli 1870, which was actually more of an economical redesignation of the Swiss Vetterli 1869 rifle. So based on a Swiss design in 1870. Now this originally fired the 10.4 millimeter black powder cartridge. It was updated again in 1887, and the final version, which I hold here, in 1915. Now this is a beast. This rifle is very heavy, very long. It is a bolt action. Again, this is a repeater using a very similar style clip system to the commission rifle, the 1888 models that I showed you earlier. Same type of, Steyr style clip that goes through the bottom of the magazine when empty. Very, very similar to the Gewehr if you really look at how this works. However, this being the 1915 improvement, redesignation, if you will, this rifle is actually kind of interesting. Made before, so this was made before 1899, so it's still an antique, but this actually does fire a new cartridge. Instead of firing the 10.4, this has actually been rechambered, if you will, or reconfigured to the 6.5 Carcano round. And I'm showing you, look at the muzzle. You can see the muzzle, and it looks like there's a little different metal, like a sleeve. That is because this actually does contain what they call the Salerno sleeve. They actually had a process, and the Salerno sleeve is actually a whole thing in and of itself. Again, if you guys are more interested in one of these guns, let me know. I can do a review on each of these that could probably go 20-30 minutes. But they basically re-sleeved the barrel using a kind of ingenious and, in my opinion, complicated process all the way down to 6.5 millimeter. Now look, guys, there's no advice on this channel, legal advice, but I'm going to tell you guys, common sense standpoint, do not fire your modern or military surplus 6.5 Carcano rounds in these. Some hand loaders have worked up loads that they found to be safe, but that's on you. I can't tell you guys what type of load to make. But even in the 1920s, they were noticing some problems with these. Because remember, this base rifle is of the 1870 design. Upgraded again in 1887. Then by 1915, a lot had changed. Modern smokeless powder compared to the big, low pressure, slower burning, if you will. Big old, huge, wide, big caliber black powder round. There's been problems with these sleeves giving way, guys. There's also been problems with blow-by, back pressure blowing back towards the shooter. If you guys want to see a video that's excellent on this, go to the CNR channel, CN Arsenal channel, I'm sorry, CN Arsenal. They actually did a whole complex video that'll tell you way more about this than I ever could, including them doing live shooting sessions where they actually did experience some safety issues with this. So for me, I probably bought this as a, I don't want to say wall hanger, but just part of the collection, because I do enjoy the history of an antique, not a firearm, but a rifle like this. But do not just buy 6.5 Carcano ammo and shoot it through yours. There's a lot more to it, and you really should go see that CN Arsenal video if you're interested. But man, this thing's a beast, especially with this Salerno sleeve in there. Just the overall length and size. But yeah, this is pretty cool, and this also came via Ethiopia, so this is basically in untouched condition, just like when it was made, you know, around 1915 or 1916. I believe they did these conversions for about 2 years, converting the 1887, which was a conversion from the 1870 technology. So there you go, there's some of the markings. And we can definitely see that this was made in 1886. I'll come over here. And this one also has a 21 in front of it. So they may have actually converted these all the way up until the early 1920s. I'm not a complete expert. We see a 21 and a certain type of typeset stamping on here. And then we see 1886. So I may stand corrected. This particular one may have been finally converted in 21 or re-arsenaled. Hey, some of you guys know more about this stuff than I do. And if you do, chime in. I'm under the general impression that around 1915, 1916, hence this has the 15 designation to it, is when they converted these. But maybe they were re-sleeving these all the way up into the 1920s for Italian service. As you guys probably know, Italy fought Ethiopia for quite a while. A lot of these were captured by the Ethiopians. I believe the Ethiopians also purchased some of these via other countries. So they ended up with quite the Italian arsenal. Many Carcano models, which I have quite a few different ones of those as well that came from Ethiopia. Again, down there in the comments, if you guys are wanting to request or interested in these kind of old guns, let me know. I have quite a few different examples of these, old Italian. This being a Vetterli, but the Carcanos, all of those. Lots and lots of Italian weapons. In fact, you can find firearms from so many countries that came out of Ethiopia. And once again, just like the ones I showed you earlier with the Berdan, with the Gewehrs, basically in the original condition as they were issued. So yeah, Italian model 1870/87/15, chambered in the 6.5 Carcano. Now I'm going to throw you guys for a loop, and I'm going to show you a couple guns that you would think might not be firearms, but actually are. And this first one is a Lee Enfield, short magazine fed Lee Enfield, #1 Mark III. This particular one being an Indian manufacturer. We'll look at the band right here and see if you can see those roll marks. GRI 1940 something. The last one didn't quite stamp out there when they roll marked it. And for the most part, this is a complete rifle. It has all of the parts that it should. However, it's been deactivated because this is a DP model, drill purpose, training rifle, used for drills of recruits and troops alike. And you can see an original example here of a complete rifle. All of the parts are there. Everything on it still functional as far as for training purpose. We can actuate the bolt. It has a real 10-round detachable box-fed magazine, but you can see right away it doesn't quite look right. We have this gaudy paint job here of the red with the white stripe. We can see the rack number there, 13, really bright red with another number below it. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, this rifle can't fire, but it's still considered a firearm. So let me show you why. It cannot fire because right here through the receiver, right in the breech area, okay? This is where the action happens. This is where the bang goes, guys. Right here. There's been a hole drilled all the way through with a pin welded through both sides. So there's a solid steel rod that is literally going to block ammunition from being loaded into the chamber. So this whole chamber area here has been deactivated by a fairly large hole, about the size of like a pencil you use in school is the best way to describe it. Drilled through, pinned, and welded. So we're already done right there. But if that wasn't enough, they also clipped the firing pin, which this is a real bolt and a real firing pin in here, but they clipped it short so it can't actually protrude. And they also filled the face of the bolt face and the bolt head. So no matter what, even if you threw a firing pin, it still couldn't protrude, but you couldn't chamber around because of the pin anyways. Now, it is not recommended that you try to convert these into firing rifles. However, all of the parts on them, once again, are real, and they make just nice pieces of history. They look good displayed with your other old rifles, and a nice conversation piece. And of course, the cost of this being much less than a fully functional #1 Mark III Lee Enfield rifle. You can see the heavily protected rear adjustable sight here. The heavily protected hooded front. They didn't screw around. I mean, this is thick, like 1/8 inch thick steel here. Same thing protecting the front bladed sight. It has the pug nose look there on the front, which I really like. Let's go back to that other one. Remember I was showing you the Gewehr 91, which is similar to the 88 carbine, the old German rifle? Look at that. Here's the German rifle, carbine, 1891 model. And then we see the Indian-made British Lee Enfield here. Very similar, right, guys? I mean, they certainly remind me of each other right away. So that's what I was referring to earlier when I said it has that pug nose that you may see in another rifle. So I thought I'd bring this one out there. Now, here's the deal. Not fireable. It says DP in like 20 different spots, probably 10. I mean, literally on the bolt handle, DP marked. Right here on the chamber area of the receiver, DP. We see another DP just in front. I mean, DP on the barrel bands. DP in the upper handguard. Alright, I'll stop. It says DP everywhere with this gaudy stripe, so it was made clear. But here's the thing. Although it can't fire, pin blocking it from chambering around, deactivated bolt, all of that. The ATF has specific ways that these have to actually be cut up. Torch cut, that's a subject for another video if you guys want it. But this has not been demilled according to ATF specifications. So just because this is essentially, you could call it a wall hanger, a conversation piece, I consider it a piece of history. Again, being much cheaper than a functional rifle. I'm proud to have it in my collection. But this is still a firearm. Still had to be shipped to an FFL. Now, if you have a curio and relic license, you technically do own a CNR, which is a type of FFL. But if you don't own any type of FFL, or hold any type of FFL, I should say, you have to go to a gun shop and fill out a 4473 for this. Just like any modern firearm that was made in the year 2020. Because, in fact, this has not been properly demilled. Just shows you the kind of gun control laws that we have. We have basically something that's antique technology, quite frankly. You know, this particular rifle being made about 80 years ago or so. A pin through the chamber, welded in place. A deactivated bolt. Why is this considered a firearm, guys? I don't know. But by technicality, by federal law, this is a firearm just as much as if you were to buy any modern sporting rifle you could think of. The ATF doesn't care. They consider them the same thing. So this is a 10 round capacity. 10 plus 1 if you will. Bolt action. Firearm. So deactivated, drill purpose, legally, firearm. Now here's another one I'll show you guys real quick here. And this meets another exception. Kind of a weird thing, okay? And this is a CZ Vz, Vzor, meaning model 52. Now, this was a transition Czech rifle. It was made for just about 5 years, evolving into the Vz 52 57, which I also have one of those if you guys are interested. And then ultimately, just a year after that, evolving into the Vz 58 rifle. Now, this being the Vz 52, this is again Czech made. This particular one also came into the United States via Ethiopia. This is a semi-automatic, feeds from a detachable 10-round magazine. Okay. A lot of people say this is basically Czech's SKS. Not really. Not really at all. Yes, it met the role of the SKS, okay? And it even has a blade bayonet that flips out that looks a lot like the blade bayonet on the SKS. So I get it, where people say, it's like an SKS, but not really the way it functions. There's a lot of differences. Now, why would I say this might not be considered a firearm? Well, you might get confused. This is a firearm first and foremost, but it shoots a cartridge called 7.62 by 45. Let's see if we can get it to hone in on those markings there. SHE, which is a Czech factory there. 007. We can see the proof mark in the middle there. 54. So this one was made in 1954. But it shoots 7.62 by 45. Well, it said earlier that if it shot something that was not conventionally either made in the USA or made by normal commercial, trade in the United States, well, 7.62 by 45 is not. In fact, I don't even think they make it over in the old country anymore, because I've never seen any modern production 7.62 by 45. The 7.62 by 45 ammo I have is old Czech surplus. And lately there's an ammo shortage everywhere, but before that you could still buy this stuff, but it was not being manufactured. But here's the key. Here's the key. The only thing that applies to is if you had a firearm that was designed off of something, let's say it was modern made, but designed off of something pre-1899, but does not fire standard readily made ammo. This doesn't meet the first criteria. This design, okay, went into production around early 1950s, right? So this is a design, and indeed this specimen was made in 1954. So even though it takes 7.62 by 45, which is a weird cartridge, not really available, this is not an antique, and this is still a regular Title I firearm because of the fact that its design was post 1898, and this particular specimen being made, you know, about what, 56 years too late. But yeah, the 7.62 by 45, although it's a weird cartridge, and due to ammo availability, you might want to shy away from it. But don't underestimate the cartridge itself. It's actually, basically, with the standard military loading, more powerful, capable of longer ranges than the 7.62 by 39. So it's an intermediate cartridge, but definitely has a little more oomph to it than the 7.62 by 39 that a lot of you are familiar with. I mentioned real quick, they did do a version of this as a transition called the Vz 5257, and I don't want this video to go too long, but there's one right over there. So you want to see more Czech stuff? Down in the comments, guys. That was converted over to fire 7.62 by 39. That was a transition that was made just for a couple years, like around 57 and 58. Still exact look-alike rifle. You can't even hardly tell from the naked eye unless you looked at the roll marks. But it was rechambered for 7.62 by 39, and then ultimately the Vz 58, which came out just a couple years later after the Vz 5257. There's a couple different stock configurations of Vz 58s, like 10 foot right over there too. So if I know you guys want to see it, let me know. I can do quite a bit on the Czech rifles if you're interested. Also a bunch of Czech pistols sitting back there, guys. Look, I'm not out of ideas at all. In fact, I have a marker board with like 50 different ideas for videos. I'm just limited on the fact that I own a small business, work full-time, do YouTube for fun. I'm not out of ideas. However, you guys know this. I do this channel for fun and to hang out with you all. So that's why I'm throwing some ideas out there. If there's any requests on anything you saw in this video earlier today, got a lot of Mosins in the collection, guys. Quite a few more German rifles if you want to see some newer adaptations. Got a couple other Lee Enfields, some other random old weird rare stuff if you're into the old stuff like that. You want to get into semi-automatic Czech guns, bolt guns, whatever, quite a few of those. Mentioned SKS earlier, something else I've been collecting for a long time. I don't know, I might surprise you guys, so if there's stuff that you're interested in that has anything to do with this, let me know down there in the comments. But these are great rifles, the Vz 52 and the Vz 57 alike. Vz 58, yeah, it won't take much to talk me into doing a Czech rifles video, guys, so let me know. And hey, this video is a little bit long, but this is one of those fun videos for you to listen to while you're driving, whatever. I do this without a script, guys. I just went through, what, 7, 8 rifles from 4 different countries, from 1870 all the way up to modern times. I probably messed up on a little factoid here and there. I get it. None of this was supposed to be legal advice. It's just for fun. I just thought the whole concept was cool. Like, what's a firearm? What's an antique? None of these were intended to be comprehensive views on any of these. So if you guys want to correct me down there and say, nope, the Italian, you know, Vetterli was rechambered with the Salerno sleeve for 3 years, that's fine. Let me know. I'm always wanting to learn from you guys, but I probably messed up a little detail, but I still had fun doing the video, and hope you guys did too. Yeah, these are pretty cool rifles. Yeah, let me know if you guys are getting any of this Ethiopian stuff. Quite a few Italian Carcanos too, sitting over there in the other room that way. Like I said, I want to do what you guys are having fun doing, because wish I could just have a couple hundred of you come over to the shop and we just sit and do the same thing. But we're all over the country, so this is about the best we can do, and I just wanted to share some weird old rifles and non-firearms with you guys today. Alright, thanks for watching, and have a good one.